Don't you wish everything was more rewarding? With Rakuten, almost everything is. You can earn cash back on those new shoes you've been wanting. You can save on the next trip you book. You can cash in on groceries. Just join. Shop your favorite brands and save. Target, Instacart, Expedia, Macy's, Sephora, CVS. The list is long. Save online, in-store, and at over 22,000 restaurants. And when it's time to redeem those rewards, get your money exactly how you want it. Choose PayPal, check, Bilt points, or cash out with gift cards. Eligible American Express card members can choose to earn membership rewards points instead of cash back. Terms and conditions apply. So go ahead, take a trip, fill a cart, order dessert. Rakuten is a world of rewards. Join today for free. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's RAKUTEN.
The moment a body is found, the clock starts ticking. 48 hours before the trail goes cold. From A&E and Crime House, this is the official podcast from the famous true crime series, The First 48. I'm Carter Roy. Every Thursday, I revisit a landmark homicide investigation in depth with long-form storytelling built for your ears. Listen to and follow The First 48 on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
And this is the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. Welcome back to the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. I'm your host, Alice, and I'm joined, as always, by my collegial co-host, Brett.
I did go to college. Is that what that means? I don't even know. What is that?
Harvard man for you all. Kids, think twice before you spend grandma's life savings on that type of education. No, Brett, that's not what I refer to. Yes, we are about to head into college football. That's all you can think about. But collegial, okay, we always say, walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. We obviously covered the Temujin Kensu case at length. We've spoken to Aaron from Generation Y about his new podcast, also covering Temujin Kensu. And you guys know that some of our favorite people in the world, the Murder Sheet, Kevin and Anya, who are here today, have also looked deeply into this case and disagree with our outcome. And guess what? That is okay. This is how you have great conversation about an incredibly interesting case with important themes that we need to be talking about rather than shouting at each other. So first of all, thank you so much for being here with us again.
Thank you guys so much for having us. We're really always excited to come on and talk to you guys.
Well, it's been way too long. I think it's been like a month, but it's too long for us. We always love having you guys on. We love everything you guys do. In case you've been living under a rock and you don't know what the Murder Sheet is, you need to stop this. Absolutely go to wherever you listen to podcasts, subscribe, listen to everything, including their coverage of the Temujin Kensu case, and then maybe come back to this interview. But we always loved the work that you guys do. And we tell everyone, never take our word for it. Look at the facts, look at the case files, read trial transcripts and police reports for yourselves, and come to your own conclusion. And do it in a way that is reasoned, and you're able to have passionate but not ad hominem types of conversations. And that's what you guys do so well on your podcast, and why we truly love being able to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
So we're here to talk about Temujin Kensu, a case that I think a lot of people are familiar with. We obviously covered it, like Alice said. It's funny because Alice says we covered it in depth, and it is a testament to how much our verbal diarrhea has increased. That we covered that case in 2 episodes. Like if we did
was
that
it
now,
only 2?
It was only 2. If we did it now, it would be like
25?
Yeah. It's just crazy. I think about that sometimes. Like we did Scott Peterson in like 5 or 6.
How
is that
My
possible?
Goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, I take it back. It was not in depth whatsoever.
You know, I went back and listened to it recently because I was curious what we said. And we were just so much more efficient back then. We didn't have all of this. All this like normal stuff. But so we've covered it. The consult has covered it. Now, as Alice said, Framed, which is Aaron from Generation Y, he's covering it. A lot of people have covered it, but usually from the perspective that Temujin Kensu is either innocent or the trial was problematic or there's not enough evidence to convict him or he should get a new trial or whatever. I mean, very much sort of an innocence perspective. Then you guys come on the scene, and I feel like you really changed people's perspective. You gave, for the first time, a very fulsome argument about Temujin Kensu not being innocent, in fact, being guilty. And I'm curious, you're approaching a case like that, I'm curious why you decided to cover it. But also, that takes a lot of guts, because it's not just undisclosed that you're going up against, quote unquote, but your friends who've also covered it as well. What were your thoughts about that when you're thinking about, man, we're going to cover this case? Are we going to make people mad? Or is it just that's part of the journalistic integrity you guys have, that you're going to tell what you think no matter what?
I was scared.
Oh, I was terrified. Honestly.
I didn't want to do it.
That you were the one who was like, we got to do it. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, we just built up a lot of goodwill with everyone covering Delphi. Let's burn it to the ground. But I mean, honestly, we were nervous. We felt like we kind of had enough information where we felt we had an obligation to. But at the same time, we knew that like our segment of true crime where we've made friends like with you guys and with folks like Julia, it's not like, yes, things can get heated or people have really strong passions about a case. But what we felt confident that we could navigate that and try to just bring a different perspective. And that's all we're doing.
Yeah, ultimately, the people we respect in this space are intelligent, rational, reasonable people. And people who meet that description aren't going to destroy you because you happen to disagree with them on a case.
Yeah.
Because if you're always agreeing with people, you're not thinking for yourself. So I will admit I was nervous, but ultimately I had enough faith that it would be okay. And it was just a situation where I have no problem with people disagreeing with me on a case or even have a different opinion on a case, as long as they have the facts. If you have the facts and you look at them differently from me, God bless you.
Yeah, and that's this case in a nutshell.
That's this case in a nutshell. But the problem is a lot of the reporting on this case over the years hasn't mentioned a lot of facts, and it's also gotten a lot of things wrong. Like, oh, Temujin Kensu, he was only suspected because he wore dark clothing and played in a rock band. And
he was too sexually attractive to the ladies, so they had to throw him in prison. Like, there's just a lot of stuff like that where you're like, okay, that's not quite.
And everybody's corrupt. And
everyone in Michigan is corrupt. We know this, right? And also.
We had just been through Delphi.
Yeah.
Where we'd gotten to know a lot of people there, a lot of good people who had been slandered by some people online. They're all corrupt. So we knew how that affected people.
Yeah.
And so when we see similar language being used about the people in this case, we imagine it affected them negatively as well. And as we got to know some of them later, we found that to be true.
One freaky fun fact, not really a fun fact, but the prosecutor in Delphi was McClelland, right? Nick McClelland. Then the prosecutor in this case is Cleland. So we were like, oh, okay, there's some weird parallels going
destiny.
On. Very destiny. But I will tell you guys, with this, I think what we found, which is kind of nice, is like maybe we put some facts out there. There's been some good discussions when we had Brett and Julia on. I think what we learned is that, honestly, the difference between thinking he's innocent and thinking he's guilty, but having all the facts, there are narrow differences. There are interpretations. Maybe some people favor some witnesses, some favor others. And I think that's good. For us, our goal was not to necessarily convince people of guilt. It's more of to have people understand the jury's decision.
So something that you noted within that I don't want to get lost, because this is a number one question we get from people when they say, okay, I can listen to the reporting and I know it's slanted, but how do I get access to a swath of information that seems like it exists out there, but it's not? And you mentioned that. You said that there was one side of reporting that was happening, and then you were gaining access to information that hadn't previously been reported on. Now, of course, we have the benefit of an actual investigative reporter on the show. But, I do think that's very important for people to know, because those of us who are all seeking truth want to have access to all the information. So can you talk a little bit about how you decided to look into it? It's like, what made you think, there's more to this? And then how you actually came around to information that you didn't think was previously reported on.
I wanted to just say, I so appreciate you giving me the credit for that, but Kevin was the one who got everything. My journalistic skills came into this in no way. But when also I wanted to clarify one thing, like when we say slanted reporting, what I look very askance at is the mainstream press, which is really supposed to have a more of an objective, at least veneer. And that's not been the case in the Michigan media market.
So what happened was when I first read about this case, it was a story on NBC News. And it said things like, oh, this guy's plainly innocent. Like a dozen witnesses placed him 500-600 miles away. The only way he could have been there during the murder was through an airplane. There's absolutely no evidence of this. It's just a completely stupid, flimsy case. And as I was reading that, it occurred to me, if even a quarter of that was true, then I couldn't imagine that all of these courts in Michigan who had looked at the case would be keeping him in prison. There had to be more to the story. And so I started looking online. There's a lot of services out there that put court decisions, appellate court decisions online. And there were briefs and decisions in the case that went into more details. And then my next step after that was anybody can have a Pacer account, go to Pacer, start looking up cases that involve him. And in one of the cases he filed was a habeas corpus case. It had, as a filing in that case, the entire transcript of the trial.
And did you read the whole thing?
Twice.
Oh, wow.
I only did once. I couldn't.
And there was also a commutation hearing that's, I think, 1,200 pages that I read.
Yeah, we're reading like Atlas Shrugged. Like it was, and Kevin's getting all depressed reading all this stuff. And I'm just like, what's wrong? And then like I got into it and I was like, oh God. I don't. It was a lot.
We didn't have the commutation hearing when we covered it. And I remember Julia, they covered it. And at some point, I think they had released their episodes, and maybe, I'm not exactly sure, and I don't want to speak for her. And she got the commutation thing. And she was like, have you read this? And I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And she sent it to me, and it does not paint a very flattering picture of Mr. Kensu. And why don't you talk about that a little bit? Because, when we talked about it, I re-listened to our episodes. I admit I was kind of nervous because I was like, I hope we didn't say anything stupid in our episodes. And I think we focused mostly on the trial, some of the problems we have with the trial, some of the evidence, as you noted, the alibi evidence, the eyewitness testimony, whether or not it's reliable, the problem with the photo lineup, the hypnotism, all that kind of stuff that a lot of people talk about. But I am curious if there's one thing, one piece of misinformation, and you don't have to limit it to one. Feel free to as many as you want. What is the piece of misinformation do you think is put out most often about the case, about Temujin Kensu, that you would want people who maybe haven't yet listened to your series, you would want people to know?
That's a great question. I think for me, we saw this a lot in Delphi where people would make claims about Abby and Libby or their families that were not true and would kind of spread around though. I mean, there was a lot of kind of talk about like, oh, maybe one of them was pregnant. And it's like, no, like, that would have come out in an autopsy. That's not true. And it's not really kind or appropriate to be saying stuff like that. Now, I'm a big believer in like, if somebody's involved in something negative and that is the truth and there's at least some decent evidence for it, I think that should be discussed because that might be actually relevant to what happened to them. The thing for me is that Scott, I understand why people are kind of like quick to say maybe he was involved in drugs. And that was something that was an issue for him because it's a mysterious death. It seems to be targeted. And we know that
on that point, and I hate to interrupt, but just on
please.
That point, because that is something people bring up a lot. It wasn't something we talked about much, but I hear it on a lot of shows.
Yeah.
And the way it's always described is that there were rumors and discussion in the community about some possible drug tie. Is that literally it? Is there any evidence of potential drug activity, or is it really just people trying to figure out what happened to this guy? And so rumors fly, and one of them is maybe he's in the drug trade.
There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever outside of Mr. Kensu's defense attorneys.
But I will say this with even we reached out to the defense investigator and we're like, what's your best evidence for drugs? What is your evidence for drugs at all? And he didn't have any, there was nothing like, okay, here we go. What he gave us was Scott knew a guy and then,
and then that guy was involved.
And then drugs. That guy was once seen going in and out of a bar So maybe he was buying coke in the park. It's like, that's what you've got. You know, that's what
it honestly is the classic, like, defense counsel. Anything could happen. You know, give them any other story, even if it's not based, you know, rooted within fact. That's really interesting that there's nothing else, though.
I mean, like, we've asked, like, you know, I mean, like, we were like, just give us, you know, whatever. I mean, because if there's something to there, we want to know. But, like, to me, there's just as much evidence for Scott being a top CIA agent who ticked off the Soviets so much that they sent hitmen to go kill him. There's just as much evidence. Like, and everyone, that's a stupid theory, but, like, that's on par with this guy, Scott Macklem. I want to tell you about him. Really nice kid. Like, didn't know where I don't think he was going in life. I mean, he's going to be a father with Crystal. He's 20. He's in community college. Has no idea if he wants to continue in community college, by the way. Like, I think he was kind of like, maybe I should drop out. But he's like, if you've ever watched an 80s movie and you have like the handsome jock who's like very popular with everybody and they're kind of evil, he's like the good version of that. Like, that was who he was in high school. He was like a leader, but like, he was nice to the nerds. He was nice to the burnouts. Like, he was friends with everybody. He was kind of a goody two-shoes.
Yeah, we talked to a lot of people who knew him, and I think we're probably just about the only ones who did. And the reason for that is not because other people haven't asked, but because people in this community, it reminds me of Delphi. They've really been scarred.
They're under siege
by what they see as a lot of lies told about them.
He's like a good.
But I do want to go back to what Anya said a moment ago. The defense investigator who's worked on this case for decades, I will give him credit for being honest, because I said, give me everything you have on this drug thing. And he said something to the effect of, well, really, when you get down to it, all I have is like one statement that I don't consider reliable.
So I appreciate he was honest about that.
And that's from the defense investigator.
And I just want to say this thing about Scott, because like we've talked about, like, he was a health nut. Okay. His ex-girlfriend, who he remained friends with, he was friends with women. Like, he was friends with girls. He was very respectful of women. And like, he'd break up with someone, but then they'd still be friends. And she talked about, like, she's lighting up a cigarette and he's like, oh, excuse me, like, takes it, throws it on the ground, stamps it, and is like, don't do that. Like, he was kind of a health nut. So I just, like, the drug thing is like, that would be my misinfo. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
No, not at all. And I think it's important. I do want to follow up because obviously Framed is out and it's talking about this. And one of the things that Framed talked about, and I've heard this discussed before, and I'm curious if you guys had any insight into this, is it seemed as though something was going on in his life. Like, he wasn't showing up to class as much. He was kind of erratic in his scheduling. You know, he might have missed the class that day, even the day that he was killed. There's sort of that. And I think part of that ties into this drug idea. It's like, well, maybe it's because of drugs, right? But at least that seems to be a little bit more solid. Is that solid, or is that also something that people overstate?
The Prosecutors is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance company to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket.
Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states. Guys, if you're like me, the past few months with kids out of school, lots of travel has just meant that I have not been in my normal routine, going grocery shopping, cooking healthy. And so I really need to get back to eating real food. And I'm so glad that Factor makes it easy, even if you're on the go, because I'm always on the go, it seems. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes. Yes, you heard me, 2 minutes. It requires no prep and no cleanup, which is music to my ears with 4 kids. So even on the days your schedule is completely out of control, eating well is still achievable. And let me tell you, their meals are delicious. I didn't really think that they could send well-made steak to my door, so I put them to the test. I ordered like 5 different steaks, and let me tell you, it was actually the best filet mignon I've ever had. My kids ate it all, and I kind of wish I got more so that I could eat some more. Every week, you'll find over 100 nutrient-dense menu items to choose from, and new options like salmon burgers, shredded pork, collard greens, and more. Plus add-ons you'll crave like pumpkin-flavored cheesecakes and protein shakes.
It's no surprise that 97% of users agree that Factor meals help them live a healthier life. So you can feel confident that you're doing something good for yourself with every meal. Let's eat real. Head to factormeals.com/prosecutors50off and use code prosecutors50off to get 50% off and one free breakfast item per box for 1 year while supplies last until 10/31/2026. That's code prosecutors50off at factormeals.com/prosecutors50off. factormeals.com/prosecutors50off. See website for more details.
Well, first, one thing I often hear cited when you talk about things going on in his life, people would talk about, when he was at work once, two men came in and were acting menacing. And golly, the police never identified who those men are. Maybe they were drug dealers. Who knows? But the fact is, I just like to clear this up. When you look at the original police reports, the witness who saw this incident identified one of those two men as Temujin Kensu. So I think a lot of the things that were going on around Scott's life that may have looked a particular way from a distance, it's Temujin Kensu. That's the risk factor in his life. When we talk about what was going on in his life, I think he was feeling overwhelmed. He was a kid. He'd had this great experience in high school.
Yeah.
Star of high school. And then suddenly he's just another kid in college. And now all of a sudden the woman he's engaged to is pregnant. So he's dealing with a lot. He's working. So I think that's what I attribute it to. I know there's another thing that's been cited as saying, maybe there's a drug connection. That people say, that morning when he went to the college, he was arriving too late for his gym class, but he had a gym bag with him. And I think the implication is, what was in that gym bag? Was it drugs? And this is something that if you talk to students at that school at that time, as we have done, they will tell you the policy there was you go to either of the gym classes. So if you missed the early morning gym class, one starts an hour later. So I imagine what was in that gym bag was his gym clothes for the class that was about to start.
An ode to being college. I think I was always in gym clothes and trying to go to the gym. Unlike now, I haven't seen the inside of a gym in decades. But let's not get sidetracked with my adult life. One thing that's coming through as well, because, in our extensive 2-episode coverage, we read, I'm going to keep making fun of this. We've always said this, we're not an investigative podcast. We read the record, the cold, hard record. Of course, we do what research we can from our desks, but we do not go out into the community as you all do. So can you talk about what sort of your own investigation you did here? And at what point in that process do you start recording your episodes or scripting your episodes? Is it an iterative process as you're still talking to people, or do you finish all your interviews and then sit down and start recording?
That's a great question. I think for something like this, you want to be talking to people early on and often, right? And we started reach outs very early, I believe, in this case, and we heard nothing. and we were just like, oh man, but like that happens, right? Some cases are like that. I'm sure, anyone who's podcasted and tried to interview people has run into that, but it was very silent. We started covering it, and we're just like, we're just gonna do the case files that we have and just kind of do it like that and kind of interpret that.
There was a little bit of an ulterior motive for that, because by that point I had read the complete transcript. I had read every filing in the case. I'd read thousands of pages. I knew this record backwards and forwards. And I felt I had a pretty good grasp of facts. And one of the problems was that when you reach out to people, as I say, the people in this community have been traumatized. There have been people who've told them, we think it's time to tell the truth about all the women he's raped and abused. And then they go and do their shows and it's, he's innocent. He's an angel. He's a Zen master. God bless him. They've been lied to. And so they don't trust you. And
one woman thought that we were like somebody else, and we'd set up a fake profile, and they're like, call me right now on Facebook, and we call them, and they're like, I thought you were someone else.
And so one of the reasons, since I already had all this information and I knew what my conclusions were based on that, usually I would still choose kind of a neutral title for the podcast series. But I wanted people to know we're for real. We're not hiding the ball. And so I called the series The Guilt of Temujin Kensu. And after the first episode came out, suddenly the skies opened and every person imaginable reached out to us, both on and off the record.
It was crazy. I will say though, like the one thing that shot us in the foot was Temujin himself. We did reach out, and I want to just be clear. The message we sent was very neutral in the sense we were like, hey, we'd love to get your side. We do lean towards guilt at this point. And we just kind of expected them to be like, okay, no, thank you. And that's totally their right. They don't owe us anything. But I didn't expect it to be like the reaction that we got. It was odd, but because we were like, you have every other podcast, man. Like, it's okay. Like,
you don't want to hide the ball.
I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about what that reaction is and how it may have, which is really interesting. He knows you're creating this podcast, and all's fair game in terms of information you get to make your content, right?
And we just wanted to be above board. I didn't want to put the guy in a situation where it's like, hi, we think you're great, and then haha, now we're gonna like ambush you. I wanted it to be like an open conversation.
Basically, long series of messages, long series of posts, which literally continue to this day, in which he questions our character. We're part of a conspiracy against him. We're being paid off, blah, blah, blah,
by
blah,
Big
blah.
Michigan.
I think he literally posted about you today.
He did.
He literally did.
Still doing
I think he called us the Moron Show.
Okay, no, Moron Sheet. I'm gotta give him credit on that
Today
one.
was the Moron
Congratulations, though. Yeah. Because in our experience, bad press is great press. People just flock to our show, and people, call us things that are,
it was so crazy at first because we were just like, and
and he was going to sue us.
Going to
sue us into non-existence.
And I will tell you guys, like, and you guys know this, you've listened to the show. We're not exactly the toughest interviewers in the world. We're not really we're not like doing ambush journalism or like, Diane Sawyering anyone. We're like pretty chill. So it's like, it's kind of funny. Like he went ballistic, but it probably would have been a pretty nice conversation of like, tell us your side, sir. Like what,
And here's the thing. It's not fun being attacked. You can laugh about it.
I think it's kind of funny.
It's not fun, but we willingly stepped into this space. So that's fine. That's part of the cost of doing business. What really bothered and upset me is at one point we had his daughter on the show, and he started lashing out at her in every forum imaginable. And I found that upsetting. And I think ultimately it changed a lot of people's minds about him. Because what kind of a man does this to his own daughter?
Yeah.
Well, like the letter he wrote to her. I mean, he's very hard to want to defend. He's a very difficult person. It's funny because so many people in the innocent space, people who claim they're innocent, whether they are or not, are super charming. They they really turn on the charm, and they want to be perceived as, and I think he wants to be perceived as a good person, but he's not capable of it. He's not. You refer to this letter. This is a 10-page, single-spaced letter that is just one long rant with sections of long caps calling his daughter every name imaginable, belittling her. It's insane. Anya read it at the end of one episode. And again, this was something that was in a court filing.
I was alone in the room, which is our front room. And then I was so worried someone was going to come to the door and be like, what's going on in there? I'm like yelling. Should I call like the police? I don't know. It was crazy. I mean, but I will say him being a really not very nice, bad dude is not necessarily like we understand that a lot of people view him that way. For us, that doesn't mean that someone is guilty or that they got a fair trial. We just are of the opinion that he is guilty and bad and got a fair trial. So
some people have said we just say he's guilty because he's a bad guy, and that's not the case.
That's not what we feel.
And
I would be like saying let him out if I thought he was innocent.
I'm certainly capable of looking at cases involving bad people and making an independent assessment. There was a case in my hometown.
Oh yeah, Kevin pissed off everybody.
There was a case in my hometown where a person committed a murder, a terrible person. I think it's very obvious he committed that murder. There's no doubt in my mind this man is a killer. But his trial was so unfair, I think you had no choice but to let him out. So I'm capable of making those decisions and those evaluations. And when I talk about his character, that's not evidence for what he did. I think it gives some context. And we talked a little bit about the commutation hearing. What's important about that, there's many things important about that, but one thing is before that transcript became widely available, people made this a credibility contest between Crystal, who accused him of some of these rapes and abuses, and Temujin, who said he's an angel. So it was basically, which one do you find more credible? When this commutation hearing transcript comes out, we see Crystal is not alone. Many, many other women had almost identical experiences with him, including him saying, oh, I'm a ninja counsel who has all these powers. These things didn't come out at trial because his experiences with other women, that's not relevant to this particular murder charge. But it is relevant if they've made her credibility an issue. It's relevant to say, oh, look, other people are saying the same story she is.
And you've really hit on something that I think is so important. Obviously, the innocence movement it's big business. And one of the things and one of the characteristics of it is whoever the target of your innocence movement is, they're an angel. It doesn't matter who they are objectively outside of the crime that they're accused of committing. It's almost like this binary that people cannot see out of. Whereas, as you know, someone can be falsely convicted and a horrible human, and vice versa, right? And that we love the cases where we're fighting for an angel. And I do think in this case, because a lot of the reporting has come from the perspective that he is wrongfully convicted, that automatically we can sweep all of these character defects and really worrisome behaviors that are continuing to be exhibited today under the rug, simply because there is kind of this innocence train moving forward. And I think that does a complete disservice to the people who actually are angels, first of all, and also all of the people who have been victimized because they are silenced and forced to be silenced in the kind of war for innocence claims. So I do appreciate you pointing that out. Obviously, it's drawn a lot of ire, not just from the subject himself, but from a lot of people online. Now, you guys are not unaware of the ugliness of the internet and people who attack you. But in this particular case, was the scrutiny and the criticism that you faced in this particular case different from, say, the Delphi case, which was also a very, very heated case?
Yeah, I mean, it was different in that I mean, like, it was at times we would be out there saying stuff and then people would be like emailing us of like, well, what about this? And then we'd respond to that. And then people would be like, you guys are attacking the prosecutors. And we're like, we're not. That was difficult because we were like, that's why we wanted to have you guys on our show, because we wanted to be like, everyone likes.
Yeah, people were trying to make.
There was like a weird thing where
I remember.
And then I feel like there'd be like people like sending people of like a clip of us like dunking on something and they'd be like, this is about you. And there was just like a weird thing where I was like, we weren't trying to be divisive. We can be very salty. I mean, our listeners were pointing out like they sound pissed, like they sound really mad. We were, because we were like, our hearts went out to the victims in this, but we weren't mad at other creators and we weren't mad at other people for having a different point of view. And it was like, we wanted to cut through some of the nonsense, but it was difficult to navigate and try to be like, we don't want to be divisive and say, oh, let's fight everyone with a different opinion. It became more of like,
By the way, I think it's fine to be divisive. I'm just going to put it out there. So I don't think you need to apologize for that personally.
No, like I feel like that wasn't our intent with this. Like, it was really more of like, let's put out what we think, and then people can kind of change their minds, stick with their guns, come into the middle. Some people are like, I just think it's too ambiguous now. Like, I mean, that was what we wanted. So that was difficult with the criticism married with like, oh, they're going after people. Like, that was really not our intent. Like,
yeah, we didn't experience that in Delphi. People weren't saying, oh, you must hate Brett and Alice because of Delphi. So that added a layer of stress that it was trying to, it seemed like there were people that were trying to divide us from people who we consider some of our closest friends in this business. So that was upsetting. Also, Delphi, when it first started happening and this rainstorm of criticism came down on us, it was horrible. On an emotional level, it was horrible. But then once you've been through that, you get a really tough skin. So it's not like it's a walk in the park, but it's like, this is no big deal.
Yeah, we were like, oh my gosh, he's yelling at us on Facebook. Wow, that's groundbreaking. Like back in the day, I think I'd be like, oh my gosh, convicted murderer is yelling at us on Facebook. And now we're like, we have no nerve endings left. Who cares? People are like, you'll tell them like, oh yeah, this guy's freaking out. He's convicted of murder. They're like, are you okay? Like, and it's like, he's fine.
Yeah, I mean, he's in prison. I
was going to say he is behind bars. So you're okay.
He's got the Catholic people behind him, guys.
I want to ask you more questions about the case, but I'm just curious about some of this meta stuff is really interesting to me. So you guys, I would say in 90%, that might be an over, maybe 80, because you did so much on Delphi. I'll say 80%. And 80% of the coverage you guys do on various cases, y'all try and stay very sort of in the middle. You're reporting on the cases, not so much advocating. I feel like by the end, and you may disagree with me on this, and I'm not meaning to insult you if you do, but I feel like by the end of Delphi, I felt like we were all fighting a holy war together. Like,
we're waging jihad.
Exactly. And then obviously, as you said, Kevin, even when you did the title of this, it wasn't the murder of Scott Macklem, it's the guilt of Temujin Kensu, right?
Yeah.
And so in both those cases, I think it was a little different. I feel like you became convinced of a position and you're advancing that position. You're like advocates for a position. How is that different from what you normally do? Do you like doing that more, or do you prefer the more neutral storytelling?
I'm so much more comfortable in neutrality. There's a lot of defense in neutrality, and you can retreat in neutrality very easily. And it doesn't look like a retreat. It looks like a strategic withdrawal, with going out there and putting ourselves out there with a lot of opinion, you definitely open yourself up a lot more, sometimes to praise. People are like, thank you for your clarity and thanks for giving us your opinion. And then sometimes to a lot of criticism. And sometimes that's apt. I mean, what came into this later than Kevin. And my attitude with this was like, I really hope I disagree with Kevin, because then we can kind of go back and forth. And then I was like, no, I read the whole thing and I ended up agreeing with him. I was just like, oh my goodness. So with this, I think the difference was, and people can criticize our style of coverage, because again, a lot of people did note, especially in the early episodes, like, why are they so angry? I think over time they kind of realized why we were. But I think, in the beginning, they're like, this is a little off-putting. With Delphi, it was like a frog being boiled in water. With this one, we were thrown into a already boiling pot. And I think that was kind of the difference, where we kind of felt like we're at a point where we have a conclusion based on enough knowledge that we feel comfortable with that. But the time at which we arrived at that opinion is just very much later in terms of the publication schedule.
Yeah, I much prefer being neutral. This was also a unique case because I think, maybe I'm wrong, I think before we covered it, there was literally no one out there saying he was guilty. I looked because I would love to have found someone so it wasn't just us alone, but there wasn't. And so I felt this needs to be told, some of this information about him tampering with witnesses, what have you. This needs to be out there, and it's not. And so that also made it a different situation.
So on the case, I'm curious what you think. This case has one of the tropes that you see a lot in innocence cases, which may or may not be true. That's, the investigation was poor. They focused on him from the beginning. They didn't do enough investigation into Scott and who Scott was and who his potential threats would be other than Temujin. You were talking about earlier that gym bag, and we're sort of speculating what's in the gym bag. And I don't really know why we have to speculate about that. You would think that would be something that there would be a hard record from the investigation where they opened up the gym bag and recorded the contents in the gym bag. I guess if that record exists, it's gone. I don't know if you have any insight on that, but that's been one of the big criticisms, is there just wasn't enough investigation. What do you think about that? What's your response to the people who say the police did not do enough in looking into this case?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that investigations are done by human beings, and no human being ever does anything perfectly. And if that's your standard, if the standard is, I can think of something they did that they didn't do, then no investigation is going to meet your standard. I can think of things I wish they had done differently. I'm not going to say they were, Sherlock Holmes and Perry Mason or what have you. But I do feel they did a thorough investigation. They looked at the facts. Scott was telling people before the crime, this man is threatening me. This guy coming into the store, he is threatening me. He's telling friends this. Scott, even cars were going by his house at all hours of the night. He tracks them down, and these vehicles are all coming from an address linked to Temujin Kensu. So that's a pretty good lead. And they do look to try to see if there's anything else. And not only do they look, but as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Kensu has a defense investigator who's a former officer who's worked this case for decades. He has tried, believe me, he's tried very hard to find evidence of other risk factors in Scott Macklem's life, and he has found nothing. And at some point, if no one else can find any risk factors, even people like the investigators who have a huge motivation to find such risk factors, at some point you have to conclude there was nothing else there. And the risk factor in his life was the crazy, violent, abusive man who was going around threatening him and harassing him.
Yeah, that doesn't make Temujin sound great there. So another, big part that people on the other side harp on is, of course, the timeline. Now, it's the prosecution's timeline, and the prosecution, we've seen this in Delphi. In fact, the prosecution is also making its best guess based on the investigation about the timeline. And of course, what you're hearing, this is an oversimplification, but it's that it was impossible for Temujin to have done it within the timeline. So you knew that was going to be, a major argument that you were going to have to look into or have to rebut. So give people a little teaser on how you deal with that. And then secondarily, people will say, well, it's impossible for someone to do it. And we dealt with this very briefly in ours is maybe a hitman. It's always a hitman theory, right? So, love to hear that, because that is a lot of people, I see it in the comments right now, like it's against the possibility of physics. So a timeline, the prosecution's timeline, of course, was something that you really had to go up against in your own reporting and investigation of this case. Can you give us a little preview of how you went about that?
Yeah, and that was actually weirdly what kind of I felt a shift in terms of my own reading of this trial transcript, because I was again, I told you I was kind of rooting for the defense in the sense I'm now we can be really fair and balanced because Kevin feels very strongly about this, but I'm going to go the flippant other side of haha, you're wrong. And I'm the safety net for me, I'm okay, all of this stuff is not sounding great for Temujin so far when I'm reading this trial. But I'm okay, the safety net are the alibi witnesses. They're going to kind of pull me out of this nosedive because you hear about them all the time. And that's what makes it an impossible murder. How can 9, 12, 20 people see you in Escanaba, which is over 400 miles away from Port Huron, when you're supposed to be murdering someone in Port Huron? But the thing is, the numbers that get thrown around, first of all, are nonsense. They're just not true. And this is what drives me nuts with the mainstream press. They're all throwing around 9. And I want to go up to these reporters and be name them. Name them and tell me what time they saw him. Because as you can imagine, when you look at this, let's say it's about, I think it's a 6.5-ish hour drive between the two places. Let's throw out the plane theory. I think that sounds ridiculous. But let's look at the driving. 6.5 hours, okay? It's tight, but you can do it. And if you are a witness in that range, Scott is murdered at 9 a.m., 6.5 hours out. If you see him, then he can't have done the murder because he could not have driven that in that time. If it's outside of that, I don't care. Then he could have done the murder and driven back. So that's where a lot of the malfeasance comes in as far as what Temujin is putting out there, because he'll use all these numbers, and they're only 3 people that actually matter. And really, they're all talking about the same sighting. And there's 2 people who say we don't really remember the day. And then one guy's anchoring them on no, it was this day. And they're the ones
parent-teacher conference, right?
Parent-teacher conference, karate studio squad, right?
Right.
And, those are the important ones. If you believe those, if you read this and you find them credible, then you will think he is innocent. And when I read it, well, I was pretty shocked because there was a lot of stuff that did not come out, as never really been talked about in the mainstream press. And that's that Temujin Kensu was calling people and reminding them that they saw him on the day of the murders in the time frame that would matter, and that would basically prevent him from being a murderer. And again, all these people are telling him, I didn't see you. What are you talking about? This is a detailed alibi he gave to police, by the way, upon being arrested. So he's okay, first I went to my landlord, then I went to this music store, blah, 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 blah. And the karate studio people are part of that. So he's calling his landlord. I remember you, remember I was giving you vitamins. Dude, I didn't see you. I saw your wife, but no, remember I was in the car. No, she drove off alone. I saw her. So he's calling all these people. He's being extremely sweaty. And, people can say, well, maybe he was just like, that's not what you do. By the way, he also called one of his girlfriend hostages, victims, survivors, who he threatened to kill if she did not say that he was 700 miles away, which is not Escanaba. I don't know where she was supposed to put him, but she told that to police early on. So he's like fishing for alibi witnesses. So why does that matter for the karate studio people? Well, the owner of the karate studio was one of the people he called. And he is overheard by a detective. Basically, no, it wasn't that day. It was this day. Don't you remember? It was this day. Again and again, he's doing this kind of thing. He's not threatening anyone, but he is pushing. And he, this karate studio owner, this is all in the transcript, calls up some of the other folks there. And, oh, yeah, Kathy, don't you remember you saw him that day? Oh, yeah, I guess I did. It's like the power of suggestion telephone game. And the thing that really sticks with me is that they're all very enthusiastic about being helpful. And, oh, you're really saving this guy. It seems to mean something to them. I think they doubled down on that. And I don't believe them.
And I want to stress, all of this came out at the trial. The witnesses he tried unsuccessfully to manipulate, the witnesses who did give him the alibi. The jury heard all of this.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important this is an obvious point the lawyers say all the time, that reading something in a transcript is fine. But what really counts is being in that courtroom and looking at the witness as they're testifying to get a real sense of them. And I think you can't dismiss the fact that the jury heard these alibi witnesses from Mr. Kensu and dismissed them. In fact, in an article after the trial, one of the jurors said, we didn't find the alibi witnesses convincing. He was making too many calls, meaning, he was trying to call too many people to try to shop for an alibi.
So just for me, though, I don't believe these people are liars. Like, I don't at all. Like, I don't think they were trying to do anything bad. And I don't think it's some kind of plot that he put in place. I just think I think the power of suggestion took a hold. And they didn't really, the one who said she saw him that day, they're asking her things like, do you remember it was election day? Like, that would be an anchor. No. Like, it's like, was there anything happening that day that made it different than any other day of the week? No. Or like that day of the week in previous weeks. Like, she's not a compelling witness.
And so, of course, on the other side, there are the witnesses who saw Temujin Kensu. And I think the folks who would say Temujin's innocent would say, yeah, power of suggestion. Happened a lot with those guys. You've got the photo lineup that's pointed to a lot. You have the hypnotism issue that's pointed to the fact that the witnesses who saw him didn't know Temujin. This was we're seeing someone very briefly, then reporting on it. I know in Framed, I think they talk about how maybe they even identified someone else beforehand, before they identified it as Temujin. Curious your thoughts on those witnesses. Did they suffer from the same weaknesses as the alibi witnesses on Temujin's side?
I'm a big Rennie Gobian defender. He's the hypnosis guy. And what he did, you should not do. Folks, if you see something bad, don't run out and have your professor hypnotize you, which just sounds like, is this like a bad movie from the 60s? Like, what is happening on this campus? But anyways, fine. It just sounds like something they would do in Scooby-Doo, I just don't do it. But at the same time, the reason I'm a Rennie Gobian defender, and I'm probably butchering his name, so apologize.
I think it's Gobine.
Gobine. Apologies to this man. He gave his entire statement to police. That was the thing that was used in trial, which is what the jury heard prior to hypnosis. So to me, the hypnosis, that's frozen in time. That's what the jury heard. I don't care that he got hypnotized. Now, if he hadn't done that and it was post-hypnosis when he's talking, yeah, you'd have to throw it out as far as I'm concerned. That wouldn't be fair. I don't like hypnosis. I don't approve of it in any true crime case. I'm talking about Burger Chef, of course, here. It's a mess. But for me, that doesn't really compel me to say throw him out. He was very certain that was the man he saw. I find him more compelling. I found him more compelling on the stand.
And people complain about him being hypnotized, which is a fair complaint.
That is a fair complaint.
He shouldn't have done it. It was a stupid move. But other people, the criticism I've heard is, well, he was interested in becoming a policeman. So obviously he would commit perjury to make a good impression. What?
Police love when you do that.
There's an awful lot of arguments in this case that sound like they make sense for just a second. But then when you think about it, it's just stupid.
Yeah. I think he thinks that was the guy he saw. I For the other ones, I mean, they're not saying we saw this guy. They're not specifically identifying him. They're describing the circumstances. They're describing things that, like an army jacket that he was known to own. They're doing other things. So to me, it's interesting. But I find the parking lot witnesses, and I don't feel like the parking lot witnesses is any indication that they were talking to each other or like, let's solve the mystery. Rennie was too sweaty about this too, but he was sweaty in a way that I don't think really impacted the trial in a particularly unfair manner.
I'm curious, this is a little unfair because she's a profiler and you're not. But, Julia's big on the manner of the attack. Doesn't seem like what Temujin would do. Like Temujin would want Scott to know it was him. He'd want to hold it over him. He'd want it to be visceral. He'd want it to be loud, and not loud in a shotgun blast, but loud in the way he did it. Like that's his personality. That's the kind of person he is. And the attack itself is very much an ambush. It seems like he never even knew what hit him. He gets shot, he screams, and then basically falls to the ground and he dies. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think this attack fits Temujin's? I mean, y'all are best friends. You talk on Facebook all the time. Based on what you've experienced with him, do you feel like this fits his personality or not?
Yeah, and first of all, love Julia, love the consult, and love her insights. It's always very interesting to kind of get, how she puts together the methodology, how she does things. So, her viewpoint is very valid as far as I'm concerned. For me, I guess I don't really see him as someone. I feel like there's a cunning to him, but then there's an erraticness. And to me, I think the most Temujin thing would be to plot a murder that he thinks he's going to get away with and then be excited about for that, for the rest of his life. And if he thinks a ninja weapon is going to do that, he'll do it. But if he thinks that, doing it in broad daylight in this manner and it's more of an ambush and that's maybe more conducive to escape, and then he tries to manipulate alibi witnesses because I was up in Escanaba at the time. I mean, that to me doesn't really sound super counter. We do also know, and this is one thing I think people say, he wasn't a gun guy. He was a ninja weapons guy. But the thing is, he owned guns. I mean, there's an incident where his landlady, he's renting a cottage. Some guy crashes into the fence in his car. He runs out with a gun. It wasn't a shotgun. I'm not trying to be misleading, but the idea that he was allergic to guns because he honored the way of the ninja is, and I know that's not what Julia's saying. I've seen people take it, and she's basically saying, based on a profile, this is what kind of I think he would do. But I think other people take it to the point where it's he hated guns. It's he didn't.
I would say in other aspects of his life, he shows an ability to come up with a plan and try to carry it out, even if it's not an in-your-face type of plan. From behind the bars of prison, he has harassed and stalked more people than you can imagine. He does this by hatching plans. And I would suggest that respectfully to Julia that she also keep in mind, I like to say that Temujin is not a very intelligent man, and I say that because I know it bothers him. And
God.
And it's also true. I think another thing to remember about Mr. Kensu is he's a coward. I think he's a physical coward. When he beats and attacks people without weapons, they are women. He loves to beat women without weapons. He loves to strangle them and beat them. When he is attacking a man, there is always a weapon. And if he can attack a man with a weapon in a way that he catches that man by surprise or ambush him, I think that's what he's going to do, because I think one of the defining characteristics of this man is he is a physical coward.
I also would say, Crystal's not a gun person. You can tell that from the way she testifies. She does not know guns, but she does describe a shotgun and that it was in his possession prior to this murder. I think she puts a shotgun, in his possession around that time. It's never been found, but to me, that is pretty compelling.
So, and along those lines, if you had to give one piece of evidence that you think is the most convincing piece of evidence of his guilt, what would it be?
That's kind of hard to say because this is one of those cases where it stacks. It's circumstantial evidence. Everything fits into a coherent puzzle. One of the reasons I believe the parking lot witnesses, other than the things Anya mentioned, is the story they tell is consistent with the facts as I know them and the physical evidence. I would think for me, the biggest thing is it just fits. This man has a history of violence. He has a history of abusing women. He's founded this crazy religion in which he is the leader and his bloodline is holy. He tells his daughter when she is older, you're a princess because of this religion.
You're going to inherit a cult, baby.
Daughter. So a few days before the murder, he goes to a party where he learns that Crystal is pregnant. And he admits this in his commutation hearing, that he thought that there was a good chance that she was pregnant with his baby. And he can't have another man raise a baby with his bloodline. And it's just a couple of days after that the stalking escalates into murder. So maybe the most important thing is, I think, his religion, his phony, fake religion, which includes a talking mouse.
It does.
I don't think that gets enough attention. And I think you need to understand his attention to fully grasp why and how this murder happened.
Are you telling me he came up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
He did it.
That was the laugh we needed. Man,
that's so great. We were on a boat once, and we met when did we meet like an artist who was behind?
Yeah, we were on vacation in Maui, like right after Delphi, and we take a boat ride, and the guy sitting next to me says, "Oh, I'm a comic book artist." And so I like comic books. What'd you do? And he's like one of the first artists, other than the original artist, to do Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
We're just on a boat.
Wow.
We're like, that's pretty cool. But I will say, I know. We're like, wow, we're on a fancy boat, I guess. For me, just reading it and kind of getting into it, it was Crystal's testimony that sealed it for me. I think she was the star witness for me. And I agree with Kevin. I don't think I see cases as boulders where there's just like some massive boulder rolling down the hill at you that's like DNA or like we found the murder weapon. And then I see other cases as like a bunch of pebbles and you look at it and you're like, is this enough? And then you weigh them and you're like, yeah. And that was that for me. It kind of just like all slots in together well. And I understand for some people, they don't like those cases. They think that's not enough. And I understand the difference in viewpoints. For me, this outweighed reasonable doubt. And I felt a big part of that for me was Crystal. It wasn't just feeling bad for her relating to her, because I think, there can be instances where someone does go through something horrible and it doesn't necessarily prove that this is what happened or that this is the person who did this particular thing. But I think like knowing what I know about like intimate partner violence too, it fit in with this kind of just maniacal seeking revenge at this young couple that this guy felt defied him. And I think, my heart broke for her.
Well, I mean, thank you for laying all this out and for also coming on the show and talking about this. Yeah, and here's the thing. You covered this like what? 5. You've done so much since then as well. Tell people what you're working on now, if there's anything you can talk about on the Murder Sheet or elsewhere, because you guys are incredibly prolific. You have your new book out about Delphi. You are constantly putting out new content. But tell people, if they haven't listened to you before, why they should head over to the Murder Sheet.
Oh God, I know. If you wanted to hear two nerdy people kind of going insane over time, I guess it's a good listen. I mean, we try to do a deep dive into cases, and that's something I think we enjoy doing, and that's what we love about your show too. And it's just kind of fun. We'll do kind of some oddball cases that maybe you haven't heard of, or that we get an interesting guest for. We're kind of a hodgepodge of a show. That's probably not a good business model, but it keeps it interesting. We're okay. The deep dive we're going in now, which is I'm slowly losing my mind, is Jared Bridegan. That is a murder out of Florida. And, there's a number of trials coming up. So we're trying to do a deep dive to get everyone caught up on that in anticipation of those trials going ahead. Kind of a classic conspiracy murder case. It's kind of it's similarities to the Dan Markle case, but it's not gotten as much media attention, but it reminded me a lot of that. But it'll be an interesting set of trials. I think there's 3 defendants going on trial, one after another. That's what we're doing now. But we're also doing a lot of nerdy stuff. I mean, I was like, we do a lot of history stuff, and I'm like, I need you guys to come on our show and talk about some of your excellent history coverage, because I'm always like, oh my gosh, you guys
Did you
are
listen
always
to our last episode about
no, but it's on my list. I'm like, I am
one.
so hyped for it. I'm like, you guys are just always doing that, and it makes my history major heart very happy. So I would love to have you guys on for that or talking about.
And I just got people mad at me because I did an episode on Candace Owens.
Oh yeah, that was yeah.
Is
Come to the
by
gallery.
people,
You
do
can
you
talk
mean
about Candace
Candace?
Owens all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's just Candace.
It's
and all her
coming.
bots.
It's coming up soon. What was the thing she's always saying? Yeah, no, that was that. Yeah, I was like, oh my god. And then like our inbox is just, how dare you? I'm really ugh.
Well, that's amazing. And you guys are always so generous in coming on so late
Oh, you're
for
fine.
us. And we really appreciate it. I looked at the time and I was like, well, darn, this is what's fun about having your friends on is you can talk all night. But I want to respect your time. Brett, you look like you're chomping at the biz. Or did you
Well,
want to
I
last
did.
word in? Yeah.
I just wanted to give you the opportunity. How many episodes did you do on Temujin Kensu? You know, where are they? I mean, I assume they're on the feed, but how can people find them? All that good stuff.
Oh, I really appreciate you asking that because I feel like I was like a hacker recently because I finally started like looking at our website and being like, how do I make this less of a mess? And I actually went crazy and made a little case library.
Well, she's doing that.
I'm gonna-
I'll talk. We did a lot more episodes than we planned. I planned to do.
Some might say too many episodes.
I planned to do what you guys do, basically just do one episode, and then it became 2, and then it became 6, however many we did, because people did start coming out of the woodwork with more and more information. At one point, a source even gave us about 30 hours of phone calls involving Mr. Kensu and his second wife, Denise, which is involving him browbeating her and just treating her abysmally, even though she was an excellent advocate for him. The thing with Mr. Kensu is no matter how much you do for him, it's never enough. And that makes me sad because there's people out there who fall for the myths of him being this great guy and they devote themselves to him and they just all inevitably end up being attacked.
So this website is murdersheetpodcast.com. And if you go in the little menu at the top, it says case library. And then you can see it like the murder of Scott Macklem, the guilt of Temujin Kensu is one of the buttons that I made. I got really crazy. I thought I was like a hacker, but I think it was probably like pretty simple to do on the internet. But if you want to go listen to us sounding pretty ticked off, I think it's interesting. I think at least, hopefully people can understand where we're coming from. And, I think it's maybe something that even if you come away disagreeing with us, it's probably helpful to get a different viewpoint. And I would just say like, sometimes we see like people say like, oh, they're just mad because of this. And it's like, just listen. I mean, we'll tell you what we're thinking. Like we're pretty kind of blunt about it. And yeah, that's my little website story. I was really proud of it. And then I'm
very proud of you. I don't know how to do that. So
I was self-taught. I was like in there. I was like, I've destroyed our website. I like thought I shut it down for a second. Like things were not appearing. And I was like, oh my gosh.
But instead, you too can find all of these episodes in their case file on the murdersheetpodcast.com. Did I get that right?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for what you do, the cases that you cover, and for having truly, I think, a collegial discussion about this case. And I wish that more people in true crime would be able to have these conversations because ultimately, we're all just trying to get to the truth. This should not be a cult of personality. This should be following the evidence and where it goes. So thank you guys so much. I hope you'll come back again soon. And I hope we've dispelled all of those rumors that we somehow are in a feud. I was like,
you should have seen us before we started recording.
That's right.
We're all communicating. How dare you? Oh my God.
Exactly.
No, speaking of which, we were literally on TikTok the other day and I typed in murder sheet because I was trying to get to our TikTok account that we just set up. And then tell them the first thing that came up.
Oh, murder sheet,
divorce. We were like, what are we doing on TikTok?
Sounds like you found the algorithm to drive clicks.
Maybe we'll have a fake feud just to drive up. No, I'm just kidding. It's just so funny. But we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You guys are wonderful. You class acts, and we just want to say we really thank you and appreciate you having us on to talk about our views on this. It meant a lot.
Anytime.
Absolutely. Okay, we better let you go. Otherwise, we risk you never coming back because we keep you on too late. But you guys are such regulars. You better sign off with us. So until next time, I'm Alice.
And I'm Brett.
I'm Anya.
I'm Kevin.
And this is the Prosecutors Legal Briefs. Okay,
know it's
that was so worth it just to see Anya's face.
It was amazing. that was cinema.
It's amazing, but we do appreciate your look of awe and wonder. This is why we keep you around.
I always feel like we should immediately go into the show when it finishes. But instead of
Each time we're always like,
cool.
now what do we do? Okay. I know people want to hear from you, so I'll go ahead. You're on so much, we don't have to explain it to you. We'll just do the sign on and let's go. All right, here we go. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, and welcome to Pluto Phone. If you know the name of the movie you'd like to see, just stream it for free on Pluto TV, where all your blockbuster favorites are landing all summer long. Catch Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
Fantastic.
The Matrix Trilogy.
Welcome to the real world.
Mean Girls.
Shut up.
Titanic.
I'm the king of the world.
And so much more. For showtimes, press nothing. They're free 24/7.
That is so fetch.
On Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.